What are you wearing there?
It's a goyabada. It's like a
A what?
Cuban. Yeah, it's like a goyabada. It's like a. It's just the kind of shirt a lot of Cuban men wear. I wear a lot of. I have a number of these things. I love these goyabadas. They're like. They were initially
It looks
invented in Cuba, where like a lot of the guys who were tobacco farmers, they wanted something that could work in the field and have lots of pockets that way they could put tobacco leaves in them. But they also wanted to be able to meet people in them and look dressed up. But it's also pretty hot in Cuba. So they made this,
sure.
this open shirt. I don't know. They're very popular with if I put my hat on, Panama hat isn't down here, my straw hat, but yeah, they're very popular with like Cuban men. So I don't know.
Yeah, you
I
know.
used to get my shirts made in Miami, and
Okay.
the guy's name was Raul. He had the same pair of scissors that he kept when he fled Cuba. The Cubans were just taking everything. They were taking like your suitcases, money, but somehow they didn't take his scissors. And when he came to Miami, I don't know how true this is, but you never know the truth and fear of the good story. When he came to Miami, he used those scissors to get a job as a tailor. And the scissors
Mm.
were stolen as he's dead now, but the scissors were stolen in a little box, in his store where you'd go there, he'd make you a custom dress shirt or a custom guayabata. And so every 3 months or so, when I first got my first civilian job, I would go down to Raul's shop and I would in Miami and I would get, a new shirt made. So much money I made back then, right? Like I get a new shirt made, I get a custom guayabata every once in a while. I would sit outside and play dominoes, smoke cigars, play dominoes with other Cuban men. My Spanish isn't that good, but I can play dominoes with the best of them. At least I could back then. I haven't played dominoes in a long time. But yeah, it's called a guayabata.
I, I'm going to
I'm listening. Yeah, let me get rid of this light. I can't hear you if you're speaking. Well, I guess you dropped off, so I'm gonna entertain your audience for a little while. Hmm. I just told a story about Raul. So it looks like we got 226 people live on right now, 237 people on. And Tin might have had a problem because it looks like, he could be being bombed right now, right? I'm sitting here safe in Maryland. Um, you know what oh, okay, you're back, buddy. Just trying to entertain your audience while you were gone. Can you say something? I can't hear you. Well, since since I can't quite seem to hear Tim, I'll take you on a little tour. And I'll do that while Tim is trying to reconnect. That's kind of, let me close this blind and there's less glare. There, I love that. It's a custom made Doctor Strangelove poster. So Doctor Strangelove is this movie from, I want to say, 1963, about like a crazy general who joined or who sent his bombers to attack the Russians under this not fake, but like under this plan, this plan in case America gets attacked. There was Wing Attack Plan R, which allowed a person who's not in the president's chain of command to launch an attack. So he activates that attack. I got a picture up there, one of my favorite paintings. It's a painting of Vasquez and Drake from Aliens. and I've always wanted to be a heavy weapons guy. And Vasquez and Drake were the heavy weapons guys in Aliens. My two books that I've written, The Wind Machine and The Last Republic. Those two books were you can get them on Amazon. You also got them on Audible. A bunch of coins back here as well. So these are, in the military, a lot of times. Oh, that reminds me, I need to restock my coins. I'm going to do that as I talk to you. So, in the military, they have these things called challenge coins. And challenge coins are, they're struck where they're made when, I take out a bag here. So, these are challenge coins. All right. And challenge coins are made, usually by a unit, sometimes by a person. And when someone does something that's really impressive, like they've done something really good, give them a challenge coin. This is mine. It's got my face on it and my ass on the back, accurate to the hair. Um. So yeah,
Look,
I just try. I have a whole. I was just at Fort Rucker, and I lost. Oh, you're back, buddy. Can I hear you? Or I can't hear you.
sorry.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you now.
Sorry
Just
about
taking
that.
your
That was
audience on
a
a tour.
technical problem there. I changed it while it was resetting. I changed into a Vishivanka because that's
Yeah, it's
what
like a
your.
goyabada, but for Ukrainians.
It's a similar kind of breathing fabric,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and your shirt reminded me of this, so I threw it on while I was waiting for the situation to
I
change. And
have a Vishivanka. And the Vishivanka that was sent to me was a 3XL. And I mean, I know I'm not exactly svelte, but this thing looked like I was wearing like my dad's Vishivanka. I appreciate the gesture, but I'm gonna have to. It's like me putting on a Magnum condom. What am I gonna do? Have mom take it in a little? Like,
look, this is this is this shirt, for those who don't know, Vishivankas are a sort of folk Ukrainian shirt, um, and it's meant it's a kind of a traditional Ukrainian kind of fashion statement, and has become really popular as a form of patriotism in Ukraine during the war. Should we get started with all those?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I got started 12 minutes ago. I didn't know if you were being bombed or something. Like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna take this over while Tim
The
goes to the
internet's
bunker.
not great, so if I do disappear, you know that it's probably because the internet's not great, and
Okay.
you can take over. But what, Ryan, for those who are joining
Mhm.
and might not be familiar with you and what you do, can you give a quick primer on all that is Ryan McBeth?
Boy, that's a very good question. I guess I'm sort of like an intelligence community influencer. Right. I went out on a date last night and I was trying to explain what I did. And I said, well, I'm kind of famous. And the woman was like, well, I'm sure you're famous in your community. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. Like, a lot of times I'll get on an airplane and someone's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, yeah, flying coach. I'm famous, not rich. Um, so I do a lot of videos. I kind of got started because when the war in Ukraine kicked off, I was working for Accenture, and I had a channel, a YouTube channel where I did a lot of programming where I explained like, hey, this is how you sort a linked list. This is how you whatever. And when the war in Ukraine kicked off, I did a couple of videos on why Russian tank turrets pop off their hulls, why Ukraine hadn't really been the subject of cyber attacks, and it really my channel took off, went from 5,000 subscribers like
Mm.
50,000. I'm like, all right, people want this. And so I started doing a lot of content about it. And, I worked in intelligence collection, at least the development of software that does that for clients. And, I mean, after about a year, I quit my job and I started doing this full time. Just doing YouTube full time where I talk about intelligence topics and just kind of
Sure.
explain things in a way that the average person can understand.
Yeah, I mean, for my money, Ryan, you're the best person out there that can explain geopolitical phenomena and military tactics, but in the most entertaining and interesting way possible, right?
I appreciate that.
Like,
I don't know like how political I get because I don't know that much about politics. I got a bunch of crap a
like,
couple of
like
days ago.
politics, but geopolitics. Between
Maybe. There was
um,
a woman who did this video about, it was about in the US, we had these 4 tech executives who were appointed to a new unit in the reserves
yeah,
called Unit 201, and she's going like, "Oh, these people, they're trying to create techno-feudalism, and it's stolen valor." And I'm like, "Let me explain what this unit does." And, like, what during that video, I said, like, "If techno-feudalism really was a thing, we wouldn't have the all the tech bros in DC would have been able to prevent a genuine, honest to God freaking communist from winning the Democratic primary in New York City." And they "Well, he's not a communist, he's a socialist." Looking over at this
Ryan,
guy,
the
stop, like,
question that
let's say he wants state-owned food stores. I saw
Ri
that movie, dude. Sometimes I go down to Virginia. There's this. Well, in Silver Spring, Montgomery County, does Montgomery County have state stores? Think about yeah, Montgomery County has state stores. So does in Virginia. If you go to Virginia, all the liquor stores are state stores. They're horrible. You walk in there and it's like 4 different kinds of whiskey, 5 different kinds of vodka. You go to Delaware where there's no such thing as a state store. It's just, you know, you
Ryan,
go
how did
into
we get
total
talking about
wine and liquor
Alright, hold
world.
on. We gotta roll this back here because I don't know
Okay.
we on a tangent about democratic socialism stores. I was just praising you for being for being a great geopolitical explainer, and you go on a rant about the mayor of New York City. Um,
My apologies. That's why I'm entertaining, right? That's why I'm entertaining.
well, Ryan, I think the question I have for you
Mhm,
is you mentioned those 4 tech
mhm.
executives getting direct commissioned. Would you take a direct commission to lieutenant colonel uh, in the military if offered to you right now?
I don't think I could pass a physical fitness test. So I
Lieutenant colonel
don't know if I would
is a,
because I don't think it
also
would be right because I wouldn't be able to uphold the standards. So I don't personally think I would take a commission as lieutenant colonel because I can't meet the standards for physical fitness. And actually, I don't think I meet the standards for wearing a uniform because my arm was amputated and reattached and
well,
yeah,
you
I
know,
don't even think I could
for,
do
for
like
these
there isn't
programs,
a military in the world because I get that crap all the time. How come you don't go to Ukraine and fight? Now, granted, I've seen pictures of dudes in Ukraine with like half an arm and they're still, they're wearing like a hook and they're still fighting. But for the most part, like, since I can't really rotate my arm to hold a rifle, I I'm no good, right? Like I wouldn't be accepted into any army in the world because
you
of
wouldn't be brought
my
you wouldn't be brought on to hold a rifle. You'd be brought on for your expertise on military
intelligence or I mean,
and, and
yes,
open
but
source.
again, I can't I wouldn't at my age and at my weight currently, because I'm 226 pounds.
Ryan, you know,
I don't meet the standards. I don't meet
I
the
go
standards.
around, I don't go around talking about people's bodies ever. But here's the exception: is when you, Ryan McBeth, you go and post a shirtless photo of yourself, stand up paddleboarding. Was it last week? And I
Yeah.
saw abs. So I don't know how you can go around saying that you're not in sufficient shape if you're posting shirtless pics uh, on Instagram.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, there's beach bodies, and then there's the military standard. Um, that
what are
I
we?
mean, I don't know. I don't feel like I would be able to meet the PT standards, and I think I would probably be more useful as a consultant
Let's get back to
than as an
your
officer.
field. I gotta rein you in, Ryan. Uh, Um, so just to introduce myself to folks who might not know me, I'm Tim Mack. I'm the founder of the Counteroffensive. It's based in Kiev, and so what we do is we cover human interest stories of the war. So in a bid to keep the war in Ukraine relevant and keep it interesting for readers, we tell deeply reported narrative stories. So rather than tell you what the news is, we introduce you to someone who lived through the news. And then by learning about them, you learn about what's happening in the world. And we cover not only Ukraine, but Taiwan and all sorts of other countries around the world where democracies are pushing back against authoritarianism. And then our second publication covers Ukrainian defense technology. It's a trade publication. It covers the technical side of the latest battlefield concepts and the regulatory environment here for Western firms to partner with Ukrainian startups. So Ryan and I have had a lot of conversations over time about military technology and geopolitics. How dangerous of a world are we living in right now, Ryan?
So I think that drone tech has made it more dangerous than it even was a couple of years ago. That's actually a very good question. Um, in some ways, drone tech has democratized warfare to the point where you get the rebels in the Congo or whatever buy
Mhm,
a cheap DJI drone and now get ISR, intelligence surveillance reconnaissance capabilities that only large governments had just up until a couple of years ago.
mhm.
So in some ways, war is actually a lot easier. It's a lot easier to be a rebel with with this kind of tech. If you have a little bit of explosive tech, you slap an explosive on that thing, send it toward the bad
Not
guys, and
rep- not just rebels, right? I think my addendum to what you were saying is that it's
Mhm.
democratized violence in a totally different way. Particularly if you're outside the United States. I mean,
Yeah.
firearms are super accessible in the United States, so that may be. Let's put that aside. But if you're in a place where you can get access to something that might blow up and a drone, both of which not the easiest things in the world to get, but relatively simple in the grand scheme of things, easier to get than say yellow cake or radioactive
Yeah.
material. Um, and what have we seen? We've seen not only the tactics that were pioneered in Ukraine being used in Ukraine, but we've seen them used by the Syrian rebels. We've seen them being used by the Houthis. We've seen them being used against the government in Myanmar. We've seen them used all over the place in all sorts of conflicts because it's relatively accessible and it's cheap, and you can rain down violence on whoever it is that you're fighting against. So not just rebels, but anyone who has a cause. And, you know, is that sort of democratization a good thing? When we democratized information, everyone thought that easy access to information a net positive for the world. Has it been?
Well, I can tell you this, we have the most powerful tool in the world, right? We have this thing. I can use this thing and I have access to basically all the world's knowledge. Like if tomorrow I need to learn how to make antibiotics, I could do that with this thing. But I could
Mhm.
also take pictures of my feet. Like
Read
that is kind of we created the most incredible invention since the printing press, right? Because the printing press democratized religion, right? Like you no longer had to rely on the priest for the truth as to what was in the Bible, the Gutenberg press, right?
Yeah.
And then I do kind of wonder if the first thing monks started doing was writing porn. like putting little
I don't.
designs in the margins as they're copying books. But yeah, the bad thing about the internet is that it has made it a lot easier to spread misinformation at an industrial scale. And when you compare that with AI, when you can have AI churning out misinformation, that's a very powerful tool. I mean, just 30 years ago, I don't want to say 20 years ago, but 30 years ago, if you wanted to put out news, you had to buy a newspaper, start a newspaper, found a you could found a TV station, right? I think for the longest time. Did you ever watch the movie Working Girl with Melanie Griffith? In the movie Working Girls, she was like a secretary. Sigourney Weaver, Melanie Griffith, oh god, the guy who played Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford was in it. It's about this girl who worked in New York. She was a secretary. She kind of works her way up to a corporation. One of her ideas in Working Girl is to create a poison pill, like to prevent a company from being bought by buying a TV station because it's illegal, at least at the time, for foreign countries to own a
Mm.
TV station. And so that was part of the plot of the movie when she comes up with this idea, this poison pill. And nowadays, there's really nothing stopping a foreign news organization or a foreign adversary
Yeah.
from starting an internet account with the tech we developed and becoming popular by echoing certain opinions and then using that tech to change political opinion or even create tactical effects on the battlefield. A good example, I don't know how true this is. I haven't fully looked into it, but I'll give you one example. Supposedly in Belgium, they had 150 people run into a warehouse or a factory that they thought was owned by Ebit and smash up a bunch of stuff because they thought this company was making vehicles, armored vehicles for Israel. Turns out they were for Ukraine,
Hmm.
but that's why they call them useful idiots, right? And that's how you have personalities on the internet creating kinetic effects on the ground, right? Where you can get a bunch of people who who aren't very smart and you can convince them that attacking a factory is a good idea. And now you have just weaponized the internet or weaponized an app to the point where you can use it surgically.
I
Um,
To
mhm,
me, these are the first order effects of AI and disinformation. But let's look even further out in the trajectory
mhm,
of the sewage that's going to be pumped into the information pool.
mhm.
Um, is there room for people like you and me 10 years down the line trying to talk about the news? Uh, aren't we going to be very quickly replaced by AI news bots? And I mean, actually, you give me a little hope because I don't think any AI could probably possibly imitate the how erratic you are. But other than
um,
that, aren't isn't Joe influencer and Joe reporter going to be very quickly replaced?
maybe. I mean, there's there is AI generated content now, and it is a threat. Although I think that one of the things that YouTube at least requires is that if something is AI generated, you have to check a box.
Hmm.
Um, I think that if major companies like YouTube see profit in that, then they will they won't prevent AI from kind of taking over the influencer space. If they see it as a threat to their platform and dominance, that's when they will rank it lower in the algorithm.
I
Because
think it's
what
a threat.
YouTube
I think it's a threat to their dominance.
well, we
Um,
don't know,
but
right?
if anyone can post unlimited amounts of information and content out there, true, false, and otherwise.
Mhm.
Um, it's not going to be good for the platform's reliability, its health, its sustainability.
Yeah.
But when I work with a lot of young journalists here in Ukraine and elsewhere. When I talk to them and they're just entering, you know, the the terribly frightening world of content creation in 2025, I tell them, look, the one thing you need to focus on right now is being irreplaceable by AI,
Mm,
right? So, what is it that you can do? What questions can you ask? What answers can you receive that no one can think of and no one can get? Um, I think there's always going to be an appetite for new information that AI, which is just an accumulation of other people's collected
yeah.
information, is still going to need. And then I think there's going to be a lot of room for there's going to be still a little room for people like you, Ryan, because people still want someone to turn to. Hey, there's some NATO summit and there's been some fiasco. What does Ryan think about this? I want to filter the information through a lens like Ryan McBeth, right? So I think the way I survive in 10 years is to, as a reporter, continue to get information that no one else gets. I tell young reporters to stay away from news conferences. If you're at a news conference, that means 19 other people are there. That means 19 other people are getting the same information you are. Spend your time at other places getting information other people can't get and writing things that other people don't have.
Mm,
Um, Having that competitive edge of exclusivity and information
mm,
is going to always have some value. And then for you, Ryan, I think, as long as you continue to build your reputation as a go-to person on explaining and understanding geopolitics in an interesting way, people are going to, I'm sure there were, and there will continue to be people after the Iran attacks booting up YouTube and saying, I wonder what Ryan's take on this is. And
yeah,
I thought that a lot of other people thought that. And one more thing, I think like really creative people are going to be fine. You know, uh, I was doing this thought experiment and I was trying to understand, if you put all of 1990s hip hop into ChatGPT, could it create 2000s hip hop?
very
And you
good question. No,
can
it
get
can't extend, it can only simulate.
can only simulate. So it can't
Mm,
create generationally new creative outcomes.
that's
Um,
sweet.
trying new
Really
things.
good.
But it can't take a new step. It can
Mhm.
only aggregate the existing, right? So the experience of 2000s era hip hop was the experience largely of the streets, right? Of lived experience of urban decay and urban struggle, and it was a form of poetry for young Americans and young people all around the world. But it was a layer of poetry that could not have just emerged from synthesizing, accumulating, and aggregating all of the previous year's music.
Yeah.
And so what that tells us? It tells us that there's still room for the next step level of creativity and still room for the tastemakers and still room for the information gatherers.
Mm.
So I have a little hope. I think a lot of jobs are going to get lost in the interim, but I have a little hope for the future that people like you and I still might, be able to keep our pants.
Yeah, I have a nephew who's in school for physical therapy right now. I don't think a robot's ever gonna do physical therapy, right? I mean, you're
Right.
always gonna
Worry
need
about
that.
that just malfunctions and tears off a limb. Um, but no, I mean, it's not just about that, right? It's about um, I think most people value a human touch at some point.
Yeah,
You know, you go in and you're a nurse in an elderly care home. If you're a physical therapist, um, those are not jobs that are likely to be taken. And if you're a plumber, that's not gonna.
yeah.
You're fine. Um, what is going to be taken are the paralegals and the researchers and the kind of mid steps in a lot of like corporate processes.
Yeah, I certainly believe that's most likely the case. I've often wondered if software engineers could go by the wayside, but I don't think so. Um, because you need, I've used AI generated, code tools before. Cursor was one of them,
Mm,
and they're very good at some things. They're not so good at other things. So one of the things that I've noticed is that you always need that software engineer that can kind of put the AI back onto the guardrails.
mm.
Especially since like sometimes when you can actually tell AI, all right, write me code that generates. I actually for one of my novels, I actually created a scene where I used a backgammon board to spell out a message that could be read from space, like one of those large backgammon, like you go to a hotel, there's a big chessboard with pieces that you can move. So I used a large backgammon board for people to using the chips on the backgammon board to send messages up to space. You just take a picture of that, and the information goes up. And I actually tried writing a computer program to encrypt and decrypt messages that way. And I did it myself, and then I did it in AI. And one of the things that AI couldn't understand is that there's a finite number of pieces on the backgammon board. Like you can understand, like, oh, okay, I'm going to generate a crypto system where I use AI pieces. I use chips or backgammon tokens as bits in a system, and from that I can spell words, really hexadecimal. But from that, the presence or absence of these chips, I can build
You
words.
gotta imagine, Ryan, that they're gonna work out a lot of those kinks, and that general competence in the future will be expected from, the AI models.
I don't think so. I really
Mm,
don't. I like people have talked about general artificial intelligence, but like you said, I'm going to start using this example from now on. Once you AI can't reason. I've often said like large language models are really more like databases, like very skillful databases that rely on probability rather than thinking
yeah, of
machines.
course. Yeah, yeah, that's true.
So you're absolutely right. Could AI invent if you fed all 90s hip hop into AI, could it create 2000s hip hop? I don't think it ever could. I don't think it ever will
That's
be able to do that. And I work with this stuff. I've never programmed a large language model before, but
different question then, can it
mhm,
understand backgammon board? Can it count I've tried to use it for some basic,
mhm,
speech processing, and I found errors in what it's
yeah,
provided. Those smaller kinks are gonna be worked out. But the larger phenomenon of not being able to create something genuinely new and creative, I
no,
think that's a fundamental structural problem, and based on the design of the structure itself, it's not gonna be able to do it. It's gonna be able to imitate if you fed it all of 90s hip hop, it's gonna make a great 90s hip hop style song for you,
yeah,
but it will never be able to create a new style, it will be able to combine old styles to form some unheard style, but it'll never be able to create a genuinely new and
yeah,
create style. And it's going to force us as humans to become much more creative if we want to compete with it.
yeah. I think you're right. I think well, when you take a look at it, our brains. God, how long have humans been around? 100,000 years, right? 100,000 years
Pretty
separate us from the Neanderthals or something. So
civilization is 40,000 years old.
40,000 years old. Civilization is 40,000 years old, but like humans are probably 100,000. I'll have to look that one up, right?
Okay.
Let's say it's 40,000. So we've had a 40,000 year head start against computers, right? When you think about it, like our brains probably goes back even further, right? That our brains have had a 40,000 year head start over these electronic machines. These electronic machines are very good at calculating things. We're not so good at that, but we are really good at thinking and reasoning. We're really good at saying like, "Huh, is that a tiger? Maybe I should stay away from that tiger. That's a thing with a bunch of stripes on it. That means danger. I'm not going to go over there." We're really good at and thinking and reasoning, because if we didn't, the tiger would eat us, right?
Mhm.
And computers have only been around for 80 years, since the 1940s, right? The ENIAC, and yeah, they're getting faster and they're getting smaller, but they don't really have the capability to evolve, right?
But it's starting to get this is starting to get actually really I'm sure you have run into these games that you're required to play in order to prove that you're not a computer. And these games, you have to turn the finger towards,
Mhm.
some item, or you have to choose the photo that matches, or the
Find me
traffic
all
light.
the traffic lights, right? Yeah.
These games are starting to get too hard for me. I don't consider myself a dumb person by any means. But, I'm on my phone and I'm squinting at the screen counting stones in a pile so that I can prove this is not gonna go on for very much longer, right? That's not a sustainable, because at a certain point, the computers are gonna do it faster and more efficiently than humans are, and that's not gonna be a method to be used at all to prove you're human. So,
Yeah, I mean, maybe. There was a video where it came out of Israel, where these Israelis were using a trebuchet, like flaming trebuchet, to launch flaming balls of whatever to burn, to burn the grass near their base. And someone said, "Is this AI generated?" And I said, "I don't think it is, because the people who were operating the trebuchet had ear and eye protection, and there was a person who was nearby with a fire extinguisher. And the only way that AI could generate that is if it had multiple pictures, thousands of pictures of modern day soldiers shooting a 1400s era trebuchet, right?
mhm.
Catapult. It's the only way it could generate something like that, if it knows about those things. And the other thing was people were wearing safety equipment, right? Because there was probably some first sergeant in the Israeli army who's like, "I'll let you build your trebuchet, but you're going to wear gloves and you're going to wear your eye pro, and there needs to be someone nearby with a fire extinguisher." And one interesting thing about AI is that it's very good at making pictures of fire, but it doesn't know that fire is hot. It doesn't,
Right. It's it
right?
that that's a fundamental issue, right? Well, look, if you asked it, "Is fire hot?" It would be able to answer. But I
Hmm.
think what putting your finger on there is that it's incapable of lived experience, right? You remember the scene in Good Will Hunting where Robin Williams' character is lecturing Matt Damon's character? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I've actually never seen it, but I'm listening.
Well, so the main character is this guy named Will Hunting, and,
Mhm.
he's a very, very smart person, but not particularly adventurous, but also super arrogant. And um, Robin Williams' character says, "Look, you probably know everything about art, you know everything about Michelangelo, but I bet you can't tell me what it smells like in the Sistine Chapel." Um, and that is kind of the way I look at AI, is that it's not going to be able to. I mean, that should be the thing that gets asked of you when you're trying to buy a ticket on Ticketmaster or something, is like, have you ever felt supreme joy? If so, describe, if so, describe it. What is it like? Not only is AI going to take a lot of jobs, but it's going to make humans more human, and it's
Yeah.
going to force us to be more creative to keep up,
Mm.
or we're going to fall behind and disappear entirely. But either way, it's going to force us to lean on the fact that we exist in the physical universe in ways that AI does. Does that make any sense, or am I just
Yeah, it
talking?
absolutely does. I mean, AI might be able to describe smells, but it can only describe smells as described by other people, right? It can't go out and experience that thing itself. It's actually a very good point. It's a very good point. I never, but yeah, the '90s hip hop. Wow, that's great. I'm gonna start using that one because you're absolutely
Um,
right. It's the best analogy I've ever heard.
the Well, let's talk a little bit about geopolitics, because I think that's what most of our here for, not a discourse on the future of
No,
AI.
no.
Let us know in the comments if you want us to keep talking about things like this. Um, Look, the future of the NATO alliance. I
Mhm.
mean, where are you were watching very carefully as they gathered in Europe recently. Does it still exist?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Not in a
I
formal
never thought
sense, not in a
I
formal.
didn't think I would ever see this, but we've gone from people being afraid that the US was gonna walk away from NATO to NATO countries agreeing to spend 5% of their GDP on stuff. That was barely covered in the press. 5%,
I think.
European countries, 32 European countries and Canada agreed to spend 5% of their GDP on defense.
By the way, there was some squirrely language in there,
Yeah,
right?
Spain was yeah,
You Uh, they said that some of them will spend 5% of GDP on defense. But there was an exit, which is which is that not every single country was going. Uh, you know,
yeah,
uh, Iceland is not going to be spending any money on defense, let alone
yeah.
5%.
That's true, but I never thought I would see that, and when I first saw the way we were treating Europe, I thought like, Jesus Christ, what the hell are these people? These people have no idea what they're doing. And there's 2 options. The first is that they have no idea what they're doing, and they just bumbled into this, and it just somehow worked.
Story isn't over yet.
Which
The story isn't over yet. Um, you know, it,
yeah,
it,
you're
it,
right.
it just at the beginning of the novel, okay? And any alliance that requires threats, it's like any relationship, you need to threaten your significant other for them to do what it is that you want them to do. Is not a relationship built on trust and mutual understanding, and not one that when push comes to shove is going to be a super um, a super enduring relationship. And that's my big concern uh, is that although the United States is kind of doing a victory lap right now and saying, "Hey, we got NATO to up their defense spending," um, there's also underneath all this an incredible question of whether these other NATO countries can rely on the United States when push comes to shove, and that's not something that has been. And that's part of the reason why the spending on defense is increasing is because European countries cannot depend on the United States anymore. I think you mentioned that you thought that the percentage figure was undercovered. I think what's been just tragically undercovered is the degree to which Europeans feel total dismay and betrayal by the United States. That if you have a long experience in friendship and alliance with someone, for them to come in, start dictating terms and threatening, um, does feel like uh, a real betrayal, and that trust is not going to come back instantaneously. That's gonna like any relationship, it can take a generation to build and a second to destroy.
Well, I think that for years, yeah, you had people like Obama. I think back in 2014, Obama said, let me be clear, you need to stop buying Russian gas and oil, right? And what did Europe do? They bought more, right? Obama said in 2014, you need to start spending what you agreed 2%. You need to start spending 2% of your GDP on defense, and Europe just went, and they went back to their socialized medicine and their cafes and their croissants. Well, the U.S. will always be there. And for years, we've been saying, dude, we're not always going to be here. You need to start stepping it up. And it took Ukraine and really it took President Trump and that the administration coming and saying, hey, the free ride's over. You guys need to you need to beat your croissant into swords now. Right. And some countries like France never really stopped, right? Like France and the UK are really the only 2 countries that have their own weapons industry. Like Germany kind of I never thought I'd ever see the day when Spain had more tanks than Germany, but here we are, right? Um, so for years we told Europe, you need to do this thing. And now the US is so deathly afraid of China that we basically said to Europe, like, you need to take care of your own backyard. We got to go worry about China. And you've talked about relationships, like, in some ways, it's not wrong that Europe has been kind of taking advantage of the United States' position of power. It's that girl that keeps shopping on the US's credit card, you know, and then she gets angry when we say you need to get a job. Is that betrayal? I mean, if the deal was if the deal was you give us bases, we give you protection, then yeah, I can understand how people would consider that a betrayal. But back in 2012, we started saying you need to stop trusting Russia so much, and Great Britain's like, you want to buy a soccer team? Cool, right?
I want to defend both the croissants and the croissant eaters. Look, there was a kind of generational deal, right? And I think part of it um, was, hey, you can base your troops in Europe, and we will rely on you for security as a result. But there's also what we're not counting here is the stability that comes when European countries self aren't fully self-reliant. That Germany doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. That Poland doesn't have a nuclear weapons program. Why is that? Because they feel sufficiently secure under NATO. And if they didn't feel sufficiently secure, they didn't feel like they were under the NATO umbrella. They didn't feel like they could rely on Britain or France to defend them if they were invaded. Then, then we have massive proliferation of nuclear weapons across the continent, leading to greater instability and a much higher likelihood of war in a place which, you know, the last time um, Europe as a continent went to war, we saw millions and millions of people die. Um, the fact that we've had peace over this period of time has been largely due to Americans stepping in and being this kind of third party that creates stability and a sense of protection. So it goes both ways, is the way I would put it, in defense of the croissants and the croissant eaters.
Uh, yeah, I can see that. Although the idea of Germany having a nuclear weapon is hilarious since they shut down like all their reactors. But yeah,
You
I
you get
could.
the point is that like
Yeah.
if it's every country for itself, that then we become a much more dangerous world. And I don't know where we go next. I don't know where we go next. I see someone saying if Poland had nuclear weapons, it actually would reduce the risk of war with Russia. Yes, between Poland and Russia, but not between Lithuania and Russia or between Germany and France, to use a
Yeah.
classic.
You think? I don't ever see that happening, but
Well,
I mean, but yeah, I get the analogy.
back on the last 80 years of
Yeah.
that, right? Um, that's not a crazy thing to think. The last 100 years of geopolitical events. It's not a crazy thing to think that a militarized Germany might be bad for the rest of Europe.
Yeah, I mean, the first two movies weren't great. I don't know I don't know if I want to see the third. Um,
The
yeah,
question,
I guess you kind of have a point about that.
and and I think the question is, Ryan, is I've heard some of some folks already saying we're already in the middle of a world war, even now.
I've said that.
So tell me, what's the argument for that? Why do you say that?
Um, I've said that because we're already seeing gray zone tactics being used, where Russia is trying to influence America by using social media, using gray zone tactics to influence how we vote in Congress. Um, and if you consider information war to be warfare, which I do, then we are already at war with Russia. When you can use social media to influence politicians to vote in a certain way, that's a problem. When you have, I've often said, like, all right, if this is an example, so I have this thought exercise that I use when I talk about why we should kill disinformation actors, and I actually that's a very it's a rough thing to say, but
You're it
we need to
as in
kill them. Like we
assassinate.
need what's that? Assassinate? Yeah, we need to assassinate, drop a bomb on them, use cyber attacks, destroy their infrastructure. We need to kill them. Could be you use a missile, could be you use assassination. We need to kill these people. And here's the example I often use. Let's say Russia wants to prevent Ukraine from receiving American 155 artillery shells. What options does Russia have? Well, Russia could tell Russia could use cruise missiles. They could send a bunch of bear bombers. They still have bombers. They still have this capability. They could send a bunch of bombers over the Arctic Circle. They could fire a bunch of caliber cruise missiles at the factory in Scranton that where we build our artillery shells. Russia has that capability. They could do that. Now, this could cause the United States to enter the war. So, but it is a capability they could do. It would destroy the factory. We don't really have any missile defenses not Syracuse, in Scranton, Pennsylvania. So those missiles would probably get through if we didn't intercept some of them with fighters. So that's option number one. Option number two, Russia could send a sabotage team so they could go to the people who work in the factory in Scranton and say, hey, we'll give you $10,000 to plant this bomb. We'll give you $20,000 to drop a wrench in, whatever, right? So they could pay a guy $20,000. When that guy gets found out, if he gets found out, if when he gets found out, that could cause a war, right? We had these guys sabotaging this plant, but it would prevent that plant from sending weapons, right? In the same way that using cruise missiles blows it up. So, but if you use the internet to tell people, call your congressman and tell them not to support Ukraine because half of the artillery shells being sent to Ukraine are actually getting diverted to the cartels. And then people in Congress vote not to send artillery shells to Ukraine because half of them are being sent to the cartels in Mexico. The effect is the same. Weapons stop getting sent to Ukraine. The effect is exactly the same. What is a weapon but an effector, right? You use a weapon because you want an effect. You don't buy a missile because you want to buy a missile. Maybe some people collect missiles, but you buy a weapon because you want that weapon to perform certain effects. So information war is a weapons effector, no different than getting weak-minded people to storm a building because they think it's creating tanks for Israel, right? No different than that. So if we view information war as a way to create kinetic weapons effects on target, then we need to start killing the people who are actually implementing these plans. And
I
it's
don't
not so hard to do. We know who they are. We just got to kill them.
I agree that we need to counter them. I'm not sure I'm yet at your stage where where violent physical action is the response for deception and false speech and
Well, for
disinformation.
me, it's foreplay. So
Uh,
that's just me. Like, look, man, when you gotta, I've helped a lot of intel on drone strikes, man, and that's kind of my jam. So when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So
um,
I guarantee you, when people start getting killed, they might say, you know what? I don't know if I need this job. Like, how would you like to be the number two guy in the Iranian army?
Let me put it this:
Like, you know.
you are a internet troll working for the Internet Research Agency in St. Petersburg. You're
Mhm.
behind a computer and you know, induce a bunch of Americans to dislike one another. Should the death penalty be the response to that? Is that
Yes.
an
That's not my freaking problem. Because if those Americans can become a kinetic effector, look, man, go work at Russian Home Depot.
we
If you're
we
working in a
can't
munitions
determine
factory,
at a time which types of information or disinformation lead to physical real world kinetic effects in
the
the way that you're
kinds that destabilize the government.
well that could be
That one's easy. But I can
that's
tell you,
such broad that's such a broad definition to encompass almost anything, including our conversation today,
oh, freaking
including
bring it.
almost any event that might be challenged, right? And so we gotta I'm just well, for the sake of our conversation, I'm pushing back on the other side of this. But I also, I also wonder if the solution to, in the same way that the death penalty is not, in my view, a good deterrent to criminal activity. I
Yeah.
don't think um, that it will be in this case either. I think people are motivated by reasons far more complex, uh, and we also don't have enough bombs. The United States has a lot of bombs in the world, but if we're to bomb every liar and purveyor of lies, we're going to run out of munitions. And so there's got to be some other approach. Uh,
There's cyber approaches. There are other approaches, right? I can tell you that one of the things that we saw when Iran literally shut itself off from the internet, there was there were people who were in this like these trolls, these internet provocateurs who were pressing for Scotland independence. All of a sudden, they just went quiet like that. It's because they're Iranian. And I
but
say, what, like, if somebody works at a munitions factory making weapons, are they a valid target?
my
This is no different. This is a weapon.
I think the adoption of policy, particularly violent policy, should be adopted in the lens of what if the most uh, narcissistic, selfish people came into possession of a government with these policies, and if they could define something as disinformation and start killing people for it,
Yeah.
that puts us in an extremely dangerous place. Which is my hesitance, right? Is to say someone has to define what is disinformation, and if we have this, uh, if we start down the road of bringing physical violence to what we see as untruth, um, we could be going down a very, very dark path.
Yeah. Why is that bad, though?
Because it's only a matter of time until some government says that truth tellers are liars and that they should be executed for telling the truth.
Yeah.
Uh,
I can't be responsible for what other governments do, though. Right.
well, what
Look,
our government,
I've
any government,
had
I don't
Russia
think
supporters come after me. And I like, all right, like we're gonna play this game. Let's freaking play.
I think
And
we
that's
I,
that's just
I
kind of the like the I don't
this
want to
is
say
this is why this going back to our previous comment. This is why I can't replicate Ryan McBeth because he's out here very chaotically encouraging the assassination of Twitter trolls. Look, my point is just that you have to design policies and laws to imagine the most selfish, greedy people in the world trying to take advantage of those policies and laws in the most perverse ways possible. And look, if you give the government the power to assassinate people because of internet speech, even if it's untrue, you run the risk of that power being turned on innocent people as well at some future point. And that's something that I think there are less dramatic ways to counter it. I hope.
what are
Part
they though? I mean, when I talk about this, people always press back. Oh, well, it's speech. It's free speech. If it's a kinetic effector, if this thing is kinetically affecting targets, then no different than a missile. If there are people saying, go glue yourself, because I guarantee you, when China invades Taiwan, they're going to put out content on TikTok saying, go stand in front of an American convoy to prevent the imperialist, colonialist, capitalist forces who just want Taiwan because they want their chips, or people in Taiwan want to join China and America is preventing it. Go stand in front of these convoys, go glue yourself to the ships. We need a way to kill these people, not the Americans who are too stupid to reason, but we need a way to kill these people because they are weapons. And so I'm not saying like you can't, someone's saying like the president's a poopy head. All right, you can call the president a poopy head all you want, but when you have people saying the president's a poopy head and we should go rush the White House, yeah, those people they need to be dealt with. It could be cyber attacks, could be kinetic, could be assassination, but we need the tools in our toolkit because in the next war, China's going to run circles around us because we have a weapon system in our pocket. TikTok is a weapon system, and we're carrying it around in our pocket. Which is,
Hey,
yeah,
I
give me more
I
kinetic effectors.
picked up my phone long ago, and not because the honest reason that I removed it is that it was too addictive, and I was spending too much time on it. This is the
Yeah.
reason I. But boy, uh, this was a really interesting conversation, Ryan. I'm really glad that we had some time to chat. For all of you who are watching and reading both of our publications, if you haven't subscribed to our publications, all you have to do is go up into the upper left-hand corner, click where you see my name, Tim Mack, and Ryan's name, Ryan McBeth, and if you touch that button there, um, it will pull up both of our publications and you could subscribe to each of them. So if you aren't subscribed to the counteroffensive, or you're not subscribed to Ryan McBeth's entertaining geopolitical analysis and explaining, please go do that now. Thanks so much, Ryan. It was always, as always, was a pleasure. We went to a lot of different topics. I hope people found both entertaining and interesting, um, and edifying. Uh, Thanks as always, Ryan. It was great to see you. Safe travels wherever you're headed next.
Thank you, Tim. You have a good day.
All right, take care. Bye bye.